in the area.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It's 6:30. Can we all please stand for the pledge?
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, I'll turn it over to Mr. Labarge.
Well, that was quick.
Yeah. Everybody wants to go home.
No. Well, anyway, good evening. My name's Ron LaBerge. I'm with LaBerge Engineering. I have Kevin Herron with me, who did a big chunk of the work on this project, so he's going to fact check me in case I misspeak. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is really simply information for the residents in this area, right? So I'm going to go through the proposed improvements, kind of how we got where we are, the cost of those improvements are going to be, and of course, what's really important is feedback from you folks to the town board, because they're in a position of having to make a determination of, do we progress the project or does the project not progress at all? So your input will be much valued. So everybody knows why we're here, PFOA. We've got one of your heads exceeding the 10 parts per trillion. That standard's getting lowered actually to 4 parts per quadrillion. So it's just a few more zeros. You can't even measure that right now, to the best of my knowledge. So, and some of you probably saw this map before. This is a map from DEC. It dated last December, so it's a little bit dated. And it just outlines the areas, where wells have been tested positive. Most of which are in this area here, area A. Right here's a middle school, just to kind of get ready position. Route 66, Richards Road, and Record. So area A is the dominant area where PFOA has been detected in drinking water wells. So the new source supply that's proposed under this project is the city of Troy. Right now, your water district number 1 purchases water from the city of Troy. It's transmitted through the city system to the town of Brunswick to your water district number 1, and then it'll be through water district number 1 to proposed water district number 2. So it's a little bit of a convoluted route, but it's there, it works. The final agreements would still need to be in place for water district number 2, but the proposed source is Troy water. So just so everybody's aware of that. So when we started working on this project initially, there was some thought of going to connect with the town of Sand Lake. So just again, orient to the map, this is 66. This is Scott's Corner Road, Weatherwax, White Church, and Riker Lake. The Algonquin Estates neighborhood and Bosworth Road. So we did look at that whole area. And the easiest way for this project to work is to just simply have a gravity-fed system, which is kind of at this pink area here, and I'll talk about that a little more. As you start going further towards Sand Lake into this area, the pressures get too low, pumps start to be required, storage tanks start to be required, and it drives costs considerably. So the project as it stands right now, at least being proposed, is this area here. Basically, Algonquin Estates, the middle school, Liberty Lane, and of course 66 from White Church, Scott's Corner Road. Over here in this area, that's the existing water district number 1. There's a water line right there in Scott's Corners Road that we can connect to. There's plenty of pressure there. So we're, I think, 98 pounds of pressure at that location. So we can serve all the way up to the school and have about 50 pounds of pressure here. We did talk to the school and they'd be more than happy with 50 pounds of pressure. So this was the basis of the project, for cost. And it's a fairly simple project. It's basically all water main, roughly 20,000 feet of water main, fire hydrants, valves, all the stuff that goes along with it. The project does include, bringing a water service line to your property line, not to your house, but to the property line. And then it also includes installing water meters in every user's home. So there would be a meter. Usually, along with the meter, you'll have backflow valves, expansion tank, and those types of things. But that's included in the cost of the project. And then, of course, there's restoration. It's a construction project, lawns, driveways, everything that you touch will have to be replaced. So the cost, which is roughly $5.5 million, a little more. And it's broken down as shown here with the construction of about $3.6 million. I'll note that we are carrying a very large contingency number here of 33%. Typically, in the good old days, which weren't that long ago, that would be 15%. There's a lot of flux in the construction market for the purpose of grant applications. The agencies are suggesting 30% contingency. So the number, if we were to build today, we're thinking 3.6 is great, but we're not going to build today. We'll go through schedule in a little while. So contingency there is a good chunk of the project budget. And then the remainder, technical work, soil borings. Some of this job will be done through directional drilling techniques. We have some stream crossings, wetland crossings. Those will definitely be done by directional drilling to avoid disturbance. Legal administrative costs, and that's everything from the legal work to create a district. If there's easements involved, getting all those written up, taken care of. There's grant administration costs included in that figure. And then the rest is survey mapping, right? We need to survey the whole thing. There's some environmental review, although it shouldn't be too bad. Engineering and construction observation. That's what makes up that $5.55 million figure. So right now, the proposed project funding, for the $5.5 million, the town will be applying for an NIWIA grant, the New York Water Infrastructure Improvement Act is what that stands for. And that'll pay up to 60% of the project cost. And since this is a emerging contaminant issue with the PFOA, there's no limit on that grant amount. But so 3.3 million is the most we can get from that program, which leaves 2.25 million, what I'm calling local funding. And the town is working on lowering this cost. They did apply for and were successful in having both state senators and a congressperson for the area supporting earmark in the next federal budget. I think the number was, correct me if I'm wrong, Keith, was it 2.5 million or 2.5 million? So that would be great if it happens, but that's so far down the road and so subject to the political winds that right now, for cost purposes and annual cost purposes, we haven't incorporated that into these annual user costs. So the annual user costs, there's three, in post-and-kill, there's three pieces to it. Debt service, which is paying off the loan, metered water use, which is whatever water runs through the meter that'll be installed in your home, and then operation and maintenance costs. And so I'll talk about each one of those separately. And by the way, I should have mentioned earlier, tomorrow morning I'll email this presentation to the town and they'll post it up on their website, so you'll have access to it. So debt service, this is how we figure an annual cost. We know our borrowing amount. For estimating purposes, we use a 30-year term at 4%. That results in an annual payment of $128,000. The town of Post-and-Kill uses a benefit unit system to assess cost. This method is the same as is used in Water District Number 1. And the board at least in our discussions, indicated they'd like to keep that same methodology because it's so much easier, obviously, to treat everybody the same way, regardless of the district you're in. So in this district, there's 171 benefit units, and a house is one benefit unit. You have a school, which is significantly more, it's like 60 benefit units. Because I think there's like 101, is that right, 101 connections, might be 110, I have to go back and look. But most of those other ones are the school. But basically what it boils down to is that for the debt service piece, the annual cost is $751. Estimated cost. That's a very hefty number to debt service cost. The metered rate, the town charges $5.25 per 1,000 gallons for water. I'll note that that number can fluctuate annually. It depends on what the charge from Troy and Brunswick is, to get it to here. But right now it's $5.25. What gets broken down is to the cost of water payment. That's what the town pays for the water, and there's 55 cents of operation maintenance included in there. For estimating purposes, we assume a house uses about 80,000 gallons a year. Some will use more, some will use less, but most will be within that range or less. So for a house, for water use, you're looking about $420 a year. And then operation maintenance, obviously the system has to get taken care of. That's estimated right now at $31,000. 7,500 of that's raised in the metered rate, that 55 cents I mentioned in the previous slide. So 24,500 has to be raised by the benefit unit rate, same units. That's another $140 per benefit. So what that means is basically a total estimated annual cost of a single family home about a little over $1,300. That number is high enough where if we get this form by the town, it would have to be approved by the comptroller's office. Don't quote me on the number. I think it's anything over about $800. They require approval to continue on. Then the whole concept of that is to make sure it's not a burden on the taxpayer. So there is one other cost associated, which is not an annual cost, and it's basically to hook up. As I mentioned, the project would bring the water line to your property line, service line, but you'd have to get it from that curb stop to your house. And of course, the cost of that is going to be dependent upon how far you need to go. And a rule of thumb, I would use, $50, $60 a foot, maybe in that range, to have that done. But there would be that initial upfront cost you should be aware of. So, if you got a little 100 feet, it might cost you $5,000 to put in your service lateral. So project schedule, and again, this is just estimated because everything is a little bit up in the air in terms of grant applications and so forth. I already mentioned to you the NIWEA application. That's at 60% of the project cost. That's due September 9th. We're working with the town to get that done. We have some environmental things to take care of in terms of State Environmental Quality Review Act. And then assuming a grant is awarded and assuming the project would be moving forward based on input from the residents, of course, the town board decision is an approximate scale. But you'd look at the completion of construction in 2024, most likely. So that is the basic information that on the water system. I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has on any of the information presented here. So, any questions?
Yep. I'll start. The contingencies, 1.2 million for contingencies.
Yeah.
I was just wondering over what time frame it is that? Because I'm assuming if you would start today, it would be the 3.58 million.
We would hope so, right?
But so what's
well,
the
it's basically
12
2
million?
years. It's 2 years. So how we really came up with that was we always use a 15% contingency, okay, which you may use, because when you bid the job, you never know. And then we added basically another 8%, 8% per year, for as an inflation factor for 2 years. So it's basically that 2-year period. So, anybody else? Yes, sir.
My name is Bruce Perry, and could you put your slide up there on your proposed district?
Sure.
I'd like to just add a piece of information that there
Absolutely.
was no way that you could have known about.
Oh, now you make me feel good now.
And I'd like to say that I read your report from cover to cover,
Yep.
and I think it's a high quality report.
Thank you.
I think it's well done. Anyhow, I own a piece of property right here,
This large piece.
which is not red in your district, I see.
That's district number 1.
Okay,
I would want to verify it again for you because.
okay. But there is some recent consideration of maybe putting some houses in there during the period of time frame you guys are talking about.
Mhm.
So that might affect your numbers as far as your costs.
True, it would depend on what district they actually are in. So for instance, if it is in Water District 1,
Right.
it doesn't really do anything for
Okay.
unless the project wants to pay for part of it. You know what I mean?
1.7 million.
Yeah.
The pipe goes right by, the
Yeah.
proposed pipe goes right in front of where the houses would likely be.
Oh, okay.
So,
All right.
I don't know, you can figure that out. I just wanted to point it out to you, this was unknown to you,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
no skin off our back.
That
This
was
is,
good. Yeah,
this is a
could be
little indication of the area that we're talking about. That's my name, that's my phone number.
Okay.
All right, great.
I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other questions?
How far down Algonquin Beach Road are you going?
This is
Because I
gonna-
live at the far end of it, but still in the town
Not
of Postal
far
Valley.
enough. We're just gonna go to, this is Seneca right here.
Okay,
So I'm
so,
going like 2 properties past there, so, the town boundary.
right, that's probably,
Yeah.
my house is probably the last house. in
Is it?
Postal
Yeah,
Valley.
no, it doesn't go
But
that
they
far.
never tested my water, but I have a $6,000 filtration system in my house right now
Look, one
that I have to
way.
pay someone to do the maintenance on, and I'm just curious why you wouldn't go all the way down.
Well, I would have to do with costs, where we would extend a considerable distance for fewer customers.
Originally, we
And we
considered
did look at that.
going the whole route,
Right.
going farther in just about every direction. But the farther we went, the more expensive it got, the less density, and the density is the problem. You're still running that same amount of pipe. When you're doing the fewer houses, which drives the cost of the project even higher, and right now, you can see we're high.
But even if my water fails your test, it still still isn't gonna matter?
As far as this portion of the project, no, we can't. We're struggling trying to figure out how to pay for this one.
Was there a density number that you used? I'm just curious
No.
about the cutoff, because I mean, obviously we have Seneca, and then we have down Algonquin Road, Algonquin Beach Road. I mean, at least there's either 8 or 9 houses past Seneca, and then they get a little farther apart.
Right.
I'm just wondering if there's a number
But most of them
that was
was,
used.
no, there was not.
Okay,
No, there's no, I couldn't give you a rule of thumb for that.
okay.
Yes, sir.
You got an estimate, you got 171 FedEx units.
Yes.
Do you have an estimate of how many people will not take advantage of?
Will not take advantage
Will
of it?
not take advantage of it?
So that's actually a very good question. So how water districts work? If the water district is formed, everybody's responsible for a debt service payment, regardless whether you connect or not. You also will be responsible for the operation and maintenance charge, whether you connect or not. You just don't pay for the water use charge. So that's at $420. But so that's how that would work. Yes, sir.
But kind of a follow-on, so I live in District 1.
Yes.
There's 400 connections in District 1 according to the report.
Okay.
How many people are not connected at this point in District 1? Because there is a limitation to how much water we can get from Brunswick.
Correct.
Without having to go to Brunswick and ask them to upgrade their system, which the town of Postville taxpayers will be responsible for.
So So, but we have had discussions with Brunswick. We're not really talking about any real changes to the pumping system, the rate. They're more concerned with the rate of pumping. So the other thing about that is this will require a new agreement anyway with Brunswick, because that agreement was for water district number 1. And as you add here, they're gonna need to either amend the agreement or create a new agreement for that. So, not, you know, as far as I don't know how many people are not connected in water district. We really look at that. There's really no improvements really needed in Brunswick to handle this. Like now, if there is a concern that if this gets extended, like the original project that I showed at the beginning, went all the way to Sand Lake, and of course there's been discussion, Sand Lake potentially working Poston Kill to get water further over. Now you're talking much larger volumes of water, many more improvements needed in the Brunswick side of things.
And kind of can follow up.
Yep.
Again, I have a water district 1
Yep.
user. In your report, you say we won't see any significant change. Can you define significant and how?
In water district 1,
How comfortable are you when that school starts pulling down? I mean, they're by far going to be the biggest user of water in this proposed district, that we actually aren't going to see any change in our pressures or water volumes or anything of that nature.
no, I don't. There's no concern with that, because even when you look at the school, yeah, they'd be the biggest draw. There's not like they're drawing hundreds of gallons a minute. I mean, so one thing I did mention, which to your point a little bit, is you know, we're talking about water main. These would be all 8-inch lines, by the way. Just I did mention that during the presentation. But I mean, we looked at this fire flow in here. Kevin, what did do you remember the fire flow number? That's
We always aim for 2,000.
yeah,
I think most
that's okay,
residents
you know.
got
So
it.
we run those numbers. So if there were a big fire down here, are you going to see something? You know, but under normal operating conditions, it's just not going to be enough flow to matter. Like you know, will affect it by half a pound? No, maybe. You know, again, tank levels and everything else, but no. District 1 should not see any changes. You follow up again.
More than somebody else does, so I've got plenty.
They're waiting for you. They're waiting for you.
So, pardon me, we have District 1, District 2. At what point does that now mean we're gonna have to hire a full-time water person just for water?
We already have that.
We already have that, so there wouldn't be any
This gentleman
additional.
bit there, Bob is our water guy, and he has an assistant as well. It's not gonna be a problem.
And is the school gonna contribute anything?
We've met with them several times. In fact, I met today with the school. They're pushing us to do it. I met with Aaron Hefner today. Believe me, they want it, but I don't think they have the funding source. I know they're looking, but today, the couple of meetings we've had, they don't have a funding source. Honestly, the member items are very important.
And one other one, so, again, because I'm in District 1, I get
Yep.
your letters, that we already, in District 1, have a issue with
Tri-element.
which is a carcinogen. So are we just swapping out one issue for another if you do this, or do you
Well, you're hitting
believe
that by
that
flushing.
issue goes
Let
away?
me just answer that for you. The way, I won't take you through all the details, but we really don't have a problem with THM. The THM problem we had was one day in September 21 with Brunswick, where we get our water, they superchlorinated because they had 2 days with 0 chlorine coming from Troy. That caused our problem. And the way it works according to the rules, you have to carry that for 4 quarters. So I don't see that as a problem at all. Matter of fact, I just took the samples for this quarter down to the lab a week ago, and we'll get the results any day. I'm sure that's gonna take us right out of that 4 quarters, okay? We had the same problem with THMs incidentally, back in 2012, okay? And similar reasons, and of course it went away. It's not a problem.
Other questions? You in the front row.
Have they looked into alternate pipe fittings, plastic versus ductile iron, copper?
Everything, in regard to pipe, everything's gonna be on the table when if it gets to the point of moving forward. Like, for instance, ductile iron, you're well aware, right?
It's 36 weeks out.
36 weeks out for ductile iron.
2023,
Right.
yet you're not looking for a pipe for at least 2025.
But, say again?
It's 2025, because if you put the bid out, it's accepted in 2023, you're 36 weeks out on pipe, maybe.
Depending on what you're ordering.
Yep.
Right, so there's options to pipe, right?
And you got state roads, you can't work in the winter,
Right.
so you're looking at 2025, and by then, all your numbers are gonna be different. Cost of fuel, cost of manpower,
Right,
all
but-
that stuff is going up, so you're looking at like another
Well-
2 years a month. That, I'm.
I have to go back to the schedule. So it is gonna depend on the availability, right? We don't know what availability is gonna be, at the end of next year.
I've been waiting over a year and a half.
But I'm well aware of that. I happen to know that project very well. But, I know you're working with Rich on it and they're having a lot of fun doing it. But I've also had other projects where, it takes a while to get it, but they get it. So, right. So very hard sourcing pipe right now, and the gentleman's right. About 40 weeks to get ductile iron pipe. Plastic HDPE is available more readily. You might have to go that route from a timing issue. It's not I don't think it's the greatest one to use, but if it's what you can get, unfortunately, that's how we work these days a little bit.
The last two major subdivisions we've had, Lockview and Quail Meadows,
Yeah.
have used all HEPE.
They use HDPE,
What
so
purpose? No problem.
you guys are used to
Less
working.
problems than the ductile iron.
Right. And HDPE has other advantages, right? You can directionally drill that a lot easier than other pipes. So we don't price it that way. We do price it more conventional construction because we don't want to get to the end and find out that we don't have money.
Yeah.
So
And
anyway,
the only problem with professional drilling is now you're drilling through a hill. So where's your water leak going to be? On the ends where you're circling. So now you're playing, where's Waldo or what?
well, if you're in rock, yeah. Right. There's pros and cons to all this stuff, right? Typically, our project there would be directionally drill under like a creek or wetland, and then you're using either ductile iron or C900, PVC pipe that's plastic for that type of installation.
Good. That's it for it. I think that's.
Oh, okay. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
This is my last question, so I think.
Okay, that's it. Let's check it
Can you
out.
bring up the map for us in just a moment? Just wanted to
Certainly.
confirm something on that.
Whoops,
Oh,
there we go.
Are those black dots fire hydrants?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
At the approximate fire hydrant spacing, hydrants get spaced about 600 feet.
Do you, and this may be outside of what you do, but do you have any data that shows if you put in the fire hydrants, if there's a benefit with homeowner insurance going down as a result of having hydrants right there? I'm trying to think if that's an offset. To
Well,
1,300.
there absolutely is a benefit to that. It would reduce your insurance. I can't tell you how much that is.
Mhm.
And, so that's kind of something you would have to look at
Right, okay.
to see what it is for
I can
you.
tell you in what it is, one, they average between $125 to $150 a year.
Less?
Okay.
Less reduction.
Less.
Thanks.
Yep.
According to your map right here,
Yep.
you have feeding Cherokee Lane and Seneca. You have that, you must be getting an easement through that piece of property off of 66.
Oh, yeah, this is just so everybody understands, this is a very preliminary plan.
Yep.
And if that's all right, that might be the easement.
So why wouldn't you put the water main on Algonquin Beach Road
We could.
and feed it into Cherokee and Seneca and bypass, or through that little divider road there, only because there's ever a water main break at after that, you're gonna put how many customers out in Seneca. Or even if they did the easement through there, you can still feed two different directions and not lose all those customers, because after, I think, what, 3 homes, 24 or 2 hours, something like that, you have to do boil water.
Yeah,
I remember
yeah,
correctly.
somewhat, yeah, something like that. I, to be honest with you, I don't know exactly myself, so. But you've been through that before, so, right. So, should we look at things like that in the final design? I'd say absolutely.
Then your
But we
alternates-
were also trying to minimize length,
Yes.
right? So that's that
And
push and pull on that.
then your alternates. Is that something that you're looking at doing right now, in the future?
So one of the, thank you for reading the report. So one of the alternates, just so everybody's aware, in fact, I'm gonna go back to, yeah, well, this one right here. So, the slide we've been looking at was just this area here. This was phase one, was an alternative connection to, Fast Runners Road. So we wouldn't do both.
Yeah.
It would just be, right now, we're really going with this one. But there's no reason we should be able to go down 66. It was just an alternative to look at. Couple reasons for that. One is, according to EFC, you have to present alternatives in your report. So we wanted to show we did that. And then, of course, there's not a whole lot of alternatives for anything else. It's pretty much once, as I said before, getting water lines to everybody's house. So yeah, this would go, in my opinion right now. Phase two on this is, as the supervisor
One hurdle
said,
at a time.
we're worried about this one right now, right? Once this is done, up and running, and there's enough interest in that area, which is key, obviously, that the town can choose to move forward with that.
Yeah, because I was reading the report, and I was over engineering myself, but I don't have a degree in it. But I was over engineering myself, because I don't have a degree.
Yeah, you're
So
supposed to over-engineer.
I know how the water systems are supposed to
Yeah,
work.
sure.
So, but if they were to do phase two, they were gonna put pump stations in, they were gonna take the PRVs out of Brunswick that the town has already paid to put in. So that was a cost we already incurred, Water District 1, and now we're gonna incur again on Water
No,
District
no, we wouldn't take them out of Brunswick, I'm sorry, maybe that wasn't clear in the
On phase
report.
2.
No, we have to install PRVs.
No,
No, it is, we have to install, and
they had
maybe,
to install them and remove them, because you were gonna put the pump station at Cherokee
Right
Lane.
here.
Yep, right there,
Right.
where all the cars go up the
no,
road.
we wouldn't touch
There.
anything, and, there's some minor modifications the town of Brunswick
Yes.
wanted.
That's
Yes.
correct.
Those,
Water
those,
District 1 is already paid for.
Right.
To go in.
Most
So
of-
Water District 2 is gonna pay that big amount.
no, those were the old regulators they had in there. They've got, because again, the Brunswick's water system is the old city of Troy water system for a lot of it. So they've got a lot of these old, I call them regulators or pressure reducing valves. They're just open. They don't really do anything. And the town's like, okay, well, we want to get rid of those. If we have to provide more water, they kind of create a restriction. So those were not, none of the new improvements, I say the Water District 1 improvements get trashed.
Yeah.
So you just walk me through this again, it doesn't really impact me, I'm just curious.
Sure.
So if the school's not willing to put up,
I didn't say the school's out well.
we haven't
I
come
think they're
to,
diligently trying, it's just,
they don't, let's say they can't come up with a source of funding. And they're a third of the benefit units.
They're
or
like
whatever,
60 benefit units, but don't quote me, but they're
Yeah.
significant,
of the 100 and.
of the 171, yes. So they're paying a big chunk of that.
Third. But if they don't come up with funding, they're still paying for all that?
Yeah, so there's a difference between initial capital cost funding and the annual costs. So the school is gonna have an annual cost associated, same as a house, except 60 times a house for debt service and operation maintenance. Then, of course, whatever their water use is, it is.
What is that per house?
Exactly.
What is that estimated fee per house, whether the house uses it or not?
So that, let me just go back to that slide here.
Sorry, I was late. I thought-
No, that's okay. Whoops. Come on, way to do it. I'm gonna go to this summary slide. So, okay, so this is the summary slide of the annual costs. That's debt service. Everybody, the house is one benefit unit. So a house, $750 for debt service. Operation maintenance is $140. Those two are on a benefit basis. So for the school, think of it 60 times that number annually.
Whether they connect or not.
They will connect. But whether they connect or not, yes, they're in the district, they're subject to those requirements.
So if I don't connect,
Yep.
I could if I want, if you do it based
Right,
on my plan.
right.
If I don't connect, I'm gonna get a bill
You will
for
get
that annual.
you will get a bill for $751 and $140. The only thing you don't pay is your meter rate.
You're still paying
That's,
for a
that's
water
if,
main.
that's if we don't get a member, right? We're trying to find other,
Right, but
this
that's,
is a proposal, nothing's written in stone, and quite honestly, I don't think it would ever bring it to you at this current cost. I don't think the board is going to bring that forward at this cost. But we have to start with a plan, and we have to work on it. We're certainly not gonna come to you and ask you to vote on $1,300 a year. It's just not
Is
gonna
this a
happen.
town-wide vote, or is this just?
No,
for the
just the
district?
district.
so let me explain a little bit how water districts are created, because obviously if you live here in this area, you've never been through it. Water districts can be created by two methods. One is resolution by a town board. They can pass a resolution creating this water district. That resolution will be subject to what's called a permissive referendum. So if somebody brings a petition of, it's not many, it might only be 20 signatures. Don't quote
It's
me.
not even that.
Well, there's a minimum though, and whatever it is, it may be less, but then that gets presented to the town board. Town board will then, there's timeframes, would have to have a referendum on the project. The other way they can go is pass a resolution forming the district subject to referendum. And have a referendum on the project. And I lied because there's a third way where actually property owners can petition the town board to create a district, which is, you basically get enough signatures, and there's a whole legal way to do that, but that's the third option. So, that's a decision that the town board makes. So, but those are the basic
So-
methods. And then as far as financing, bond resolutions and so forth,
But, so if the fee for living, the benefit of living along that line is roughly $900.
that would be roughly the annual cost to you, yes, without,
Okay, you're not using water.
correct.
And then you have your individual house hookup cost, which is several $1,000s.
Correct.
If I'm not mistaken.
You are correct,
Now, that's a one-time fee.
yes,
These are annual fees.
yes.
Whether you use the water or not.
Except for the meter use rate, you are correct.
I see it as a tax, and that means our town tax just went up several times.
But that's how it works.
I'm not.
I understand.
I'm not shooting a messenger, I'm just.
I understand.
Stating a fact.
Well, that's why
Now,
we're here.
those numbers assume Algonquin participating or not?
Those numbers assume everybody within that pink area on the map, is in the district. Yes.
And when you say you're trying to get a grant for that, Keith, which one?
This
The
is
one-time slush fund from the feds, or the grant that we're doing here, is that gonna be an annual guarantee fee fund?
First off, you're talking about things that hasn't happened. This is a proposal of what it'd be right now without federal funding. We're probably not gonna bring it forward without federal funding. This is with our grant that we applied for.
Which
And
you're,
simply
which you're
the grant.
going to apply for.
Right.
Right. So,
And no federal funding.
And that's a one-time shot. So maybe they subsidize that construction, and so we don't have that $900 cost.
right, I mean, you would come back,
But that's only 1 year. What about
No.
the next 20 years?
No. So-
Once it's built,
so,
once it's paid for, it's paid for. You don't have to pay for It's just like the district we have now. There's a fee,
I'll explain.
the fee for those bonds. When the bonds are paid off, it
It's
goes
an annual,
down.
it's an annual.
No, let me try to,
I have a couple of questions to you, some charts add up, but I also have some history that I think could fill in a couple of.
okay, I'd be happy to, but I just want to finish this one gentleman's.
District number one got, was benefited by the Obama stimulus package, basically paid 50% of the capital cost of the project.
Okay,
Reducing the benefit unit charge from 720 down to 360. And so that was a good reason to go forward,
Mhm.
and of course, we were shovel ready, we got the money to move forward. The other benefit we got, and this was my question, what interest rate would you assume in the 750?
we use 4% at 30 years.
30.
Yeah, 30 years, yeah.
Okay. No one's done any, we got 0% financing in District 1.
Right.
Is there a reason we can't get District 2?
I'm not sure you'd be income qualified for 0% financing. I'm assuming that was through the, well, you weren't here, the drinking water, DWSRF program, or the EFC program.
Yes.
Right.
Revolving loan.
Yeah, whether they would, I mean, that's a hardship case type of thing these days, that's income driven. I'm not sure what the income levels were in District 1.
Did you build out two curb stops for every parcel?
Did we do it by parcel?
Yep.
Yeah.
Get rid of that right away, but
Parcels
very
of
few of
homes.
them lined up with where
I'm
they
sorry?
built the house.
I'm sorry.
Parcels of homes,
Occupied,
Parcels.
occupied
Occupied.
parcels.
correct.
Yeah.
Non-occupied, we do not assume.
District 1 had a curb stop for every single parcel.
Oh, I see, okay.
And it was a waste of money.
The one difference, you've included water meters and that equipment, which were in District 1, that was not paid for. If we have an installation today,
Yes, it was. The loans and everything else paid for the first several hundred.
okay,
And-
today, we're up to 450. And of those last couple of hundred, resident comes in and he pays $275 worth of water. Okay? Now, there was a benefit in District 1 only until December of that particular year. After that, we did not give free water meters away. That was an incentive to hook up.
Right.
Whereas in your case, and it's not millions, but in your case, you've included that cost. And I offer you that probably, when push comes to shove, we probably should consider exactly what we do and have done for the last 7 or 8 years in District 1. The resident comes in, they pay $40 permit fee, $275 meter fee, and then the other equipment, backflow preventer, and that sort of
But that's one of those things that the town board can have to decide how we do it. I mean, we include the cost in the project, so it's covered.
Just kind of a side note, it is important, a lot of Algonquin beach, Algonquin Estates is on shale. And we'll have to.
Right, I gotcha. Right, right. No, we looked at that and we realized that there's gonna be some construction, issues with that. But I wanted, I'm sorry, did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to come back to the gentleman here for a second.
I'll
So,
always defer to Dominic.
okay, you're gonna cede your time?
We're getting, now that I know it.
Oh, now. So just coming back to how funding works, okay, so as the supervisor was alluding to, there's this capital cost and annual cost. So, we were talking about a grant, so, we're gonna apply for the NIWEA grant, that's at 60%. Obviously, you're hoping, for the congressional year. So those are one-time lump sum, so to speak, right, to pay the construction cost. And then whatever, the way we assume that the program going is without the earmark, only the NIWEA grant. And so, that $751 is basically paying off the local fund. If the school paying off, the school's not paying anything in the capital fund, they're gonna pay an annual cost like we talked about before. So the numbers that I presented here are annual costs, but the grants are not annual. I mean, the grants up front.
I understand.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I've done billion-dollar grant programs.
Okay, I'm
so
sorry. Maybe I
It's a
misunderstood.
one-time shot.
Yeah.
So it will be a recurring fee, whether you are using the water or not.
Correct.
That's my point.
Okay.
And it could change. The number could change, it could be higher. After the first year is paid for.
No, the grant's not to pay the debt service cost. The grant is paying for actual construction, and you're not.
Your debt service is what is going to be left over after state and federal funding.
Right. Right.
Not the whole.
So that debt service payment shouldn't be changing annually. We're not relying on a subsidy every year. It's really the subsidies all up front. Oh, wait a minute, he didn't get one in
He
there.
didn't let me build.
Whatever the increased costs to the school are going to be.
Yes.
That's all new costs, one they never had to spread to taxpayers. Is that new cost limited to that big area, or does that get spread?
No, it gets spread throughout the entire school district. Keeping in mind, though, the school has significant operating costs.
They have two full-time guys right now just trying to operate their water system. I talked with Aaron, who manages their water system, the facilities there, just today. He's praying that this goes forward. It would save all the taxpayers in that district a ton of money. It would be much cheaper for the school to be in a water district than doing what they're doing now with a filter system that, quite frankly, in probably 2 years isn't going to be adequate because you're changing the levels of requirements for QFA and PFAS, and it's not going to meet that level.
Well, your point's a very,
I mean, they're a big driver
Right.
of this whole issue, so I'm just curious.
yeah, no, your point's a very good one. It doesn't just come back to the other ratepayers in this area. It goes back across the entire school district down to, yes.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
so I just want to make sure, I think I got this right. So if we got enough grants to do the construction, so there would be zero debt service, if you didn't hook up to the line, your only annual cost would be the operation and maintenance for that going
That's
past your
correct.
house.
If there were absolutely no debt service,
Yes.
that's correct.
Okay.
About $140, I think it was, right, for operation.
Yeah, okay.
Plus one.
What's that?
Plus one.
Plus your water.
Well, no,
No,
you
no,
don't
no.
use it. That's what I'm saying, you don't hook up.
If it
What's
doesn't
the,
hook
what's the cost if it's just going by your house and you don't hook up and it's totally paid for?
Listen,
How many gallons per day did you estimate?
we estimated 80,000 gallons a year. So that's kind of a typical house.
How much per house?
That's at 400.
Well, just as an FYI, with all the estimates they did for District One,
Yeah.
they were nowhere near what people actually use. People use probably 20%
I'm sorry.
because
They use 20% of,
of what they predict.
oh,
They-
yeah, okay.
They predicted 80 gallons per day per person.
Oh, yes, I know, yeah, I know that, yeah.
So, people don't use that, people draw on wells.
Right.
So they don't water, they don't do a lot of things that
Nope.
people, because that number comes from urban residents.
Yeah, typical subdivisions, things like that. No, I agree. But
But it does
It
factor
should-
into,
it factors into the cost, but it just brings it down if you're not using
it
it.
also factors into the question that came up earlier, will Daisy Lane still have water after this is done?
Yes.
And the answer is yes, because we really don't use as much water.
Oh, I got you.
The other point, Phil, I think is important on your point. Tom, stop me if you want to say anything. The benefit unit in District 1 from the start, we're in the mid $300s, $360. The highest we've ever had now, because of other things we're doing, is $403. I guess what I'm saying is, I happen to live in District 1, but if I was in District 2, that's $750. I don't, in my opinion, you're not going to experience that because of the grants.
but we can't, that's right, but.
Follow up on the grants. In your experience, you've written a lot of grants.
We have,
Your company has.
yes, we
I know
have.
that for a fact.
Yeah.
How many times, what percentage of your grant writing has resulted in 100% funding of construction for a water district?
Very little.
Thank you. It's not-
We don't anticipate 100% funding. That's,
Yeah, that's
we
why
don't,
we're
we don't,
presenting
we don't
it the way we
anticipate
are.
that.
What's your average percentage?
Oh, I couldn't answer that question. But that's why, you know, the most practical grant application is New York Water.
Is what?
The New York Water grant application is 60%. You know, it's the PFOA project, which is all over these days. So that's why we're presenting it with only that grant. So any further grants just help reduce, not eliminating the debt service.
But
So, just point of clarification, or if you can just walk us through.
Try.
So, residential house is one unit.
Yep.
I know in District 1, it comes to about 2.5 people per house.
Mhm.
How do you get to 60 for the middle school, which is gonna have 700 plus people in it? How
We
does
just
that?
did it based on estimated.
Oh, I can answer that.
Okay, go ahead.
Local law, the local law establishes the benefit units of non-taxing jurisdictions. So, for instance, the Folsom Elementary School.
30.
40-something?
30.
30.
They have 1/3
Put-
numbers.
Put in the water flow. And they have to pay.
We changed it to 171.
All for us.
Yeah.
This seems low.
Other questions?
Are there any phases where you would look at doing like the end of Outback Lincoln where my house is? Is that ever gonna be looked at? I mean, I know you also got money recently, right, in a grant for other things like a park and
Well,
road paving, and did you take any money from there? I'm just looking to get decent water in my house.
that amount of money that we got is a drop in the bucket compared to this cost.
Well, I don't have shale, we bypass the estates, where they have more money than I do.
I wish I could tell you that
I
that
only
is in
have
the
a little
plan.
ranch.
It's not in the plan.
We could go right through the swamp.
If I could do it financially, I would, but I gotta be honest with you, it's not in the cards in this upcoming proposal. It's just not. We're struggling with this right now. As you can see, it's gonna be a pull. Good. No.
So one of the things that we learned, one of the real keys to getting federal grants, to getting EFC on board, is they went searching to find the grant for us. And it was, things, a thing like this has its moment, and you've got to be able to strike when the moment.
We're hoping that this is our moment, but we've got press on this, you've been at our meetings, we've had hundreds of people showing up.
I frankly, I don't understand why the state's not funding this to a certain degree because of the contamination that's in the ground. That they didn't proceed, nor did they try to avoid. And I think they're on a hook to help out. And I know what I'm gonna be doing November 8th down there. I'm gonna be lobbying somebody very hard to try to get some money to make this work. Frankly, yeah, sure, people at Algonquin Beach have more money than
Well, not all of them.
not than some people, but I'm retired, so I don't have any more income coming in, so this is an expense. $1,000 a year, which is added on to my bills, it's kind of doing a turn off. $500 added on to my bill. For their peace of mind, that's a big difference, and I think that's one of the things, I don't know if you pointed that out, but municipal water district, the municipal water system must, absolutely must meet whatever standard state or federal government adopts
Oh,
for
correct.
any
Correct.
of the contaminants. So, you know, like, one of my thoughts is, well, I could just put a whole house of carbon filter system in my house and pay a lot less money. However, I can't fit the school districts in the same boat. They can't fit.
Correct.
I would make a suggestion that when you do the grant application, beyond just the NIREA one, Algonquin School services parts of 9 towns. So it's not just Poston Hill.
Right.
I mean, it affects a broader area than that, and I think that should be part of the.
Absolutely.
proposal,
No, you
that
raise it.
You are serving multiple municipalities.
Well,
That,
the town of Sand Lake is in the same process we're in. They're just a little bit farther behind us. But yeah, they're desperate for the water as well.
Yeah.
When we met with the school, the town of Sand Lake met with us. We met jointly with the school. We're trying. We've reached out to everybody to sign letters that we can get, signing letters. We've had other towns, we've got local officials. We're trying, but these numbers that you're seeing, we're not gonna propose them for a vote. They're just too high. And we gotta do something different and find other avenues. And when we get to that point, then we'll bring it to you. But this is just an update to where we are right now.
I'm just saying, like, when you do the proposal, just
Correct.
include that factor.
it will be. Because your point is, you have students coming from other areas, it affects them.
It affects them
Correct.
too, yeah. It's not
Correct.
just a little piece of Ocean Hill, it's much bigger than that.
Correct.
Well, maybe when the news does a report tonight, they can push the fact that this water district is important to other towns, other communities, not just Poston Hill. We're a step in that, and we don't get it, they don't get it.
I think the quote is the state's gotta come up with some cabbage to make this work.
You're right, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're all looking at the same numbers. But just please remember, tonight is not the proposal that you're gonna see. This is just an update of where we are.
Okay, but you say that, and I respect what you're saying. Hopefully that's not the case. That slide shows numbers. And that's what they are today,
Yes.
okay? Now, this town received, I think, $480,000 from one-time federal fund. I'll call it COVID aid from the feds. Very few strings, there are some strings attached. We've had listening sessions. I'm not sure you're really listening to the results of those listening sessions. I understand that 3 roads were repaved with some of that money.
Yes.
The highway department has its own budget.
It wasn't, the cost of fuel, the cost of oil, the cost of paving has skyrocketed.
Right.
We had to take those off. If we don't say, and then, believe me, it wasn't unanimous. There were members of our board that felt the same way that you did. But I felt that we couldn't get that far behind on our paving schedule. We wouldn't be able to catch up. I see darker days ahead financially. We're financially in good shape right now, but I don't see that lasting with this economy. So if we don't, we've been relatively careful with what we do. The other towns have already spent that money. We still have money available.
You have about $330,000, so what I'm suggesting is besides the grant that Beardsley is pursuing for us and our federal government friends are endorsing, why not use that $330,000 to reduce that debt service?
We might lose part of
Put it on
that. We
the
don't have
table
to
now.
do that now. We have years to decide that.
Well, you know what, the improved roads don't affect everyone in the town either, okay?
Everybody drives the road.
Well, I may not drive on those roads that are going to be paved with this money. So when you say, well, we can't provide free testing for PFAs with that money because it only affects certain people, that's simply not true. That PFA test should be available to everybody in the town who wants it for free. I paid for mine home because I wasn't offered a free. I live in Algonquin State.
I also.
And a lot of us did.
Okay, but can I point out something? I understand your concern, but tonight is not a public hearing. Tonight is not that meeting. We've had those meetings. This was a meeting.
You
Tell you where we are.
brought up the whole
Okay.
town versus a part of the town.
Okay, so, but again, we're getting off target here tonight.
I'm done.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, Keith, when you said all the avenues, I just want to be clear, because I think these guys have put together a plan, and that is the plan as far as visible infrastructure that would bring water. So I'm assuming the only avenue really is just more funding.
Yes,
Okay, so that's it. I mean, we're just trying to get more money into the town to pay for this.
which is
But
why we
that's-
hired
that
an
is the
engineering
plan.
firm that specializes in grant writing, and,
That would be the plan. In general, it's preliminary. but
I mean,
that's
you're
the
not
plan.
gonna, I mean,
It's how you pay for it.
yeah, okay.
believe me, I know this little town of Costa cannot afford 2.5 million, we just can't. And I would never bring it to you, I just wouldn't.
A lot of the people affected can't afford $1,000 either.
And I wouldn't bring you $1,000, I've said that several times, I'm not going to bring you $1,000 proposal, I'm just not.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily mean to speak for my board, but they can tell you, I don't think they have that in mind either. We're not bringing that proposal, we're bringing you an update to where you are now. We're just trying to figure out a solution.
I appreciate the effort. There's a lot of other issues involved here,
There are,
directly and indirectly.
I know.
I had a couple of questions, so if you don't mind. So the proposed district as it exists today, does this, if we were to make, maybe, but if we were to make edits to it, would it impact our ability to, would it impact the state funding?
No, not really. I mean, at some point, you have to say, this is the district.
I know.
Right, so this district boundary here, you know, we basically came up with that district boundary. We had, in some consultation with the board, but we basically generated that, and then we trucked it to help get the cost down. But yeah, I mean, there could be tweaks to this boundary.
Yeah. There's always gonna be someone who's just on the outside of the.
Correct.
Right, that's always difficult.
Right.
I would like to see us be able to take it further down Algonquin Beach Road, and I understand that's added costs, but that's one thing I would like to see. And then I don't, not for a discussion tonight, but I just, is there any benefit to, I know you mentioned, weather wax as an alternative, but what is the downside outside of just probably cost? Is it just cost to doing all the weather wax?
Oh, if you wanted to do a weather, yeah, that's cost. Again, not a lot of ratepayers for a pretty long stretch of line. That's why it was kind of the alternates, this or that. But you could, I mean, obviously you could.
We also have feedback from some of the people, otherwise it said they don't want that line.
Right.
I would like to see this extended down almost all the way to the not wine,
The other one.
line.
You know, that was our first focus, but it doubled the cost.
Right. That's about, yeah, that adds about another $7 million.
That going down Algonquin Beach Road.
No,
No,
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about that.
No, I'm talking about taking
Algonquin.
it down Algonquin Beach Road to Wine Bridge.
Two lines.
You're talking about a half mile.
Right.
Yeah, no, we've got the numbers somewhere.
You're only picking up, yeah, but still, I mean, it's,
Well, that's one of those decisions, right? And, one thing too is, remember, districts can only be extended, you know, so, and that happens all the time.
right.
You know, so part of the challenge the board faces is, okay, where do we start that district? Right?
The other question I have for you, Ron, was if this went to a vote of the potential users in the district, this is probably a procedural question, but does the school board get one vote? One vote.
One vote, they probably don't even bother voting.
Well, I just didn't know.
Based on,
They would get 60 votes.
no, it's not a portion that way. Property owners get the vote,
Right.
right? So basically,
Effectively.
but for a vote is not your standard vote, right? You have to be on the deed to your property.
Right.
Right, so ironically, if you have 7 people on your deed, if all 7 people get the vote. If you have 7 people living there and only 1 person can be.
And then, right. And the last question related is just for Bob. Do you know ballpark, how many folks in District 1 have connected in the past year and a half, 2 years?
Okay, the total benefit units, Dom, you can chime in, approximately 1,000. We've got 450 connected.
Does that include,
Vacant land?
parcels, right?
Yes,
That includes vacant
yes,
parcels.
it does.
But in the, let's say the past 2 years, we have had more folks in district and out of district connected.
I was just gonna say, that number does not include out-of-district users. And we have approximately today 35 out-of-district users. Eagle Road, for example.
But we have seen an increase.
Yes.
In the 12 years of the district, we've seen an increase in the past 2 years of people connecting,
Absolutely. I can tell you, I've had 5 within the last week and a half.
really.
Yeah, yep. Everybody is concerned about the PFOA OS. So if they're in the district, one, their house is worth more than if they don't have water to it. It's just a point factor. And secondly, they're saying, and the average connection cost in District 1 today for a contractor to come in and do the whole from the curb stop in, $3,000, $3,500.
So that would be probably more in certain areas. We're talking about.
Yeah, if you're going.
Today's construction costs, I'm
Further.
sure you 10 to 20% increase.
A lot of those houses are.
10 to 20% more than that based on current construction costs.
Those are current numbers. We just gave you current numbers.
What's the current number?
Yes. Actually, a guy came in today and he's doing one for 2,800.
That's also, so
Okay.
those houses are closer to the road than like,
Yeah,
Some of the
distance,
houses
it's all about the distance.
right? Greg's house is gonna cost more, right? It's further away from the road. Those were my only questions.
Anybody else on the board?
I think benefit units are about 800, slightly less than 800, not 1,000.
No idea what that number is off the top of my head.
Okay. We've done some work on that with the assessor and with Tiffany, and I thought it was higher than that, Don, but it was quoted higher than that to me, I'll tell you that.
There's a lot of, I mean, the thing is, we thought when we opened the West District, we'd get a big hit of people pumping up, and then it get really, really soft. And what's been happening with all the stories about polluted groundwater, is it really has stimulated more people to pump up.
Don, just make another point on that. If I have 10 acres of land today, I'm one beneficiary. If I break that down, I've got 10 homes, now I'm 10 beneficiaries. So that's one of the reasons for the increase in benefit. We've had subdivisions, and they increased the benefit unit count.
Do you know how many of those connections, those homes that hooked up, have kept their wells in play, kept their wells active, or if they shut down? Do you have any information on that?
The legal requirement is that, I'm gonna answer your question, but I'm gonna give you background. The legal requirement is you have to have total separation, cannot have cross connection. That's against New York State law. All the people that I've hooked up every single one of these 450 over the years, okay? And I can tell you, I can count on 2 hands that if they want to keep the well for their outside watering and that sort of stuff, they can do that. Totally separate and isolated from our town system, okay? And I'm gonna say approximately 20, 25 maybe, that's about it.
But we can't have a dual system inside, is what you're saying.
Correct,
It's against state law.
correct. It cannot,
Your well can't pollute the
Right.
public water.
the concern is cross-contamination, right? You have an untreated water that could enter into the public system, so there has to be a distinct connection.
That's also impactful.
What about for a pool? Pool is considered
Yeah.
outside water?
I'll guarantee you the health department. is not gonna
No,
approve
but
that.
if somebody were to interject it, that's what you're supposed to be for.
If, correct, but it's not gonna be done.
Harold? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
Thank you for your work.
thank you for your attention, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
If you know any of your,
Yeah.
state and federal officials,
I think he did
call
pretty
please.
good. People are listening.